So we are at the end of March, beginning of April, so that means it's time for me to do my Q1 wrap up. And this is a time where I look back over the January, February and March, give you my stats for the quarter, but also highlight some of the top reads from the last 3 months. I'm on track with my reading goal, which is 15 books a month, and I'm currently at 45 books for the first quarter. That came to a total of 14,951 pages, and it works out to about 186 pages per day. Of all the books I read, 5 of them were ARCs, 5 were audiobooks, 8 were ebooks that I physically bought, and 27 were on Kindle Unlimited. I had 1 2-star read, 1 2.5-star read, 3 3-star reads, 8 3.5-star reads, 20 4-star reads, 7 4.5-star reads, and 5 5-star reads, 2 of which were rereads those, so I'm not going to talk about those today. In terms of the genres, I had 2 alien romances, 1 billionaire romance, 1 contemporary romance, 17 dark romances, 2 erotic romances, 13 mafia romances, 1 Omegaverse, 3 paranormal and 5 sports romances. So what I'm going to do today is talk about the top 8 books of the quarter. I had 3 5-star books that I want to talk about, and then I have a few 4.5-star books that I really want to highlight as well. The first book I want to talk about, an absolute standout of the quarter, my absolute favourite one that I read, was Hills of Shivers and Shadows by Pam Godwin, and this is book 1 in the Frozen Fate trilogy, so this one absolutely does end on a cliffhanger and we have 2 more books to go. But I got this one as an ARC and I read it in the month of March, and I also did a reading vlog for this one, so if you want to know more about my thoughts on that, a little bit more in depth as I went through the story, then please go back and check that reading vlog out. So this is absolutely a dark romance. It's got loads of different tropes in it and also lots of triggers, so please check those out as you go. Mainly though, this is sort of an abduction, captive sort of story, and it's also eventually going to be a polyamorous relationships with several of these characters. Now in this one we're following our heroine Frankie, and she is abducted by Denver, who takes her back to a very remote place in Alaska, in a very challenging environment, which is literally in the middle of nowhere. It's extremely cold, there's hardly any food, it's in the middle of, you know, the wilderness, so basically lots of natural dangers, as well as the fact that Denver is there with 3 sons, Leonid, Wolfson and Kodiak. And then we're really thrown into kind of a very dark, suspenseful mystery of exactly why Denver has taken Frankie, who his sons are, how they're related, if they're there of their own accord, is Denver the actual enemy here, is there other things at play, and really just following each of these characters to figure out what the hell is going on. And also Frankie is absolutely amazing. So I love Frankie's character in here. She is a very strong, independent, very intelligent woman, and I really like the way she acts in this, some of the decisions that she makes, because it's a really nice balance of her absolutely trying to escape, but also doing her homework, you know, trying to figure out what's going on, making notes about what she's seeing so she doesn't forget things, trying to connect the dots. And as she learns more, she writes down more and she starts to try and figure out what the hell is going on and look for ways to escape, and figure out how she's going to get out of there, where they are, why they're there and everything else. So I really like how Frankie approaches this situation. And what I will say is, and what I noted during my, you know, when I was vlogging about this one, is that this is a dark romance. It's a very big chunky romance. It's well over, you know, 600 pages. We know it's a dark romance. Obviously it starts off with a kidnapping and an abduction, a captive situation, but nothing really bad happens for the first 40% of this book. But what Pam has done a brilliant job at is building the suspense, building the tension. It was constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. So nobody's done anything too horrific yet. We know something's terrible it's going to be unveiled. These characters are going to be put through hell, but we don't know what it is. And as we build up to some of the more dramatic moments in this story, we're literally left on a knife edge throughout. Literally I was on the edge of my seat. I absolutely love this one. Cannot wait for book 2, and would highly recommend, if you haven't read this yet, if you like a dark romance, then absolutely dive right in. Now, although I like dark romances, I'm starting to think that I like sports romances, but I also really like fake dating scenarios as well, because the next 2 books I want to talk about are both fake dating sports romances. In fact, both of these are hockey romances. So the first one is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. Now, this is a fairly old book, first written in 2015. It's a very well loved book, and I've heard a lot about it, but I've only recently picked this one up, and I was so glad I did. Rated this one 5 stars, absolutely loved it. And like I say, this is an ice hockey sports romance. It's also fake dating. It's book 1 in the off-campus series, and in this one we're following Hannah and Garrett Graham. As well as it being fake dating, this is also friends to lovers and some sex education in here as well. So Hannah, our main heroine, she has been through a very difficult time. So what we learn is that she was sexually assaulted when she was a teenager. She did the right thing by reporting it, went to the police, and the person who did this to her was arrested, and they were going to prosecute him. Unfortunately, this person had friends in high places. His dad was sort of the mayor. They had their, hands in lots of different pies around town, and eventually this person got off, was never convicted, and in fact Hannah then was made to look really, really bad in town. She became the town pariah, and her family, her parents, had to borrow a lot of money for their legal defence, had to remortgage their house, and now are kind of stuck in town where people hate them. So Hannah is, quite traumatised by this experience, but also harbours a lot of guilt for the fact that her parents are now struggling, seemingly because of her. Now, Hannah's had a lot of therapy, and she is able to date men again. In fact, she had a boyfriend. The problem was that although she was open to a sexual relationship with him, she could never orgasm when she was with him. So now she feels that there's maybe something wrong with her, and she's defective because of what's happened to her. So she hasn't dated anyone in quite some time, but she's recently become attracted to a new person in college, as someone who's part of the football team. Meanwhile, we have Garrett Graham. He's on the ice hockey team. He is absolutely brilliant at ice hockey. His father was an ice hockey legend himself, but the problem is that he needs to keep up his grade point average in order to stay on the team, and he's failing in one particular class, which Hannah happens to be really good at. And so Garrett basically says to her, will you tutor me? And at first she says, no, I don't have time, and I certainly don't have time to tutor somebody in the hockey team. You're arrogant. I've heard about your reputation. Not interested, thanks, no. But Garrett is very persistent, and he's also very observant, and he realises that Hannah has got the huts for this guy on the football team, and so Garrett offers Hannah a deal and says to her, if we fake date, then I'll definitely increase your street cred, and this guy will notice you and want to go out with you, and in return you can tutor me. And so Hannah agrees to this deal, and again, like all fake dating tropes, what happens is they spend more time together. Hannah starts to realise that Garrett is a great guy, starts to trust him and talk to him about what's happened in her past, and then basically ask Garrett if he'll help her, because she realises that even if she gets the attention of this football player and starts to go out with him, it's going to be a bit awkward when it comes to sex, and she's not able to enjoy herself. So basically she says to Garrett, I really, really trust you, feel really comfortable with you, can you help fix the problem that we've got here? And Garrett obviously agrees to this, and then very quickly they realise that it's actually they want to be with each other, and their relationship goes from there. Absolutely loved it. Garrett Graham is absolutely a fantastic character, and I loved every moment of reading this one. So then I read The Fake Out by Stephanie Archer, and this is book 2 in the Vancouver Storm series. This is another ice hockey romance, but this one's not set in college. This is set after college. and it's another fake dating, sort of friends to lovers. The other really good thing I liked about this one is that there's no third act breakup, and I really appreciated that. So in this one we're following Rory and Hazel, and Rory is our ice hockey player. Obviously he's very talented ice hockey player, and Hazel is our sort of physiotherapist. She is a physio for the ice hockey team. Now, Rory and Hazel went to school together. Rory's always had a bit of a crush on Hazel, but they've always been sort of friends. And now they're on the same team together. They're still sort of friends. Hazel, though, is unable to commit to a relationship. She has one night stands with lots of different people, but won't ever date the same person twice. And this is because when she was in high school, she had a boyfriend. She was madly in love with him, thought he was everything, followed him to college, but he was a complete and utter asshole, cheated on her, was really horrible to her, knocked her confidence, and broke up with her in the most painful way possible. So Hazel really doesn't trust men, and like I say, she is steering clear of relationships as a result. Now, this guy also happens to be an ice hockey player, and eventually he is transferred onto the same team as Rory and Hazel. And now Hazel is faced with having to be her ex-boyfriend's physiotherapist, and he seems to take great delight in really embarrassing her, forcing, you know, her to be in close proximity with him, and kind of like giving massages and stuff like that, and he thinks this is hilarious. And Rory realises how uncomfortable Hazel is, and basically offers to fake date her, pretend to be her boyfriend, so that this other guy will leave her alone, and she doesn't feel, you know, quite so exposed by the situation. And as a result, because they're supposed to be boyfriend and girlfriend, they have to spend more time together publicly, and then they start to spend more time together privately as well. They send really cute text messages to each other, which I absolutely loved. And yeah, their relationship goes from there. So another fake dating, a sports romance, which I absolutely loved and would highly recommend. So from sports and romances back to another dark romance, and we have Even If It Hurts by Sam Mariano, and this is book 1 in the Coastal Elite series. And in the first quarter I also went on to read books 2 and 3 as well. I also rated book 3 as a 5-star read, but I really wanted to talk about Even If It Hurts because this is the very first one in the series, and if you haven't read it yet, then I really recommend that you do and carry on with the series because it's absolutely fantastic. So in this one we're following Dare and Aubrey. Now, Dare is a true psychopath. He will absolutely do anything and is prepared to do anything. Aubrey, on the other hand, is just an ordinary, very sweet girl who is trying to, you know, support her mum. Her mum is very sick with cancer, and she is literally exhausted going to school, doing her homework, trying to have a job to pay towards some of the bills and look after her mum. And she works in a shop, like a clothing store, and Dare, who is our main male character in this one, I'm not going to call him a hero, he has a girlfriend who is a psychopath as well. She turns up at this clothing store where Aubrey is working and wants to return some clothes that clearly didn't even come from the store and clearly have been worn, and Aubrey basically says, no, I'm sorry, I cannot take the return, the clothes aren't even from here, you can't do that. And this girlfriend of Dare's takes absolute umbrage to this and basically tells Aubrey that she's going to make her life live in hell. And in fact, what she does is she goes to Dare and she says, Dare, I want to get back at this girl, I absolutely hate her. How about you pretend to really like her, charm her with your amazing charisma, go out on some dates with her, and then let's stomp all over her basically and be really mean to her. And Dare isn't too into this revenge plot, but he's very interested in Aubrey. He sees something in Aubrey that he quite takes a fancy to, and he decides that while he strictly doesn't want to do what his girlfriend says, he's thinking that actually he also wants to play with Aubrey. And so that's what he does. And this book is, well, Dare for a start, like I said, I don't want to call him a hero. He is absolutely not a hero. He is the main male character in this one. He is very dark, very scheming. You have no idea what he's capable of, what he's absolutely going to do. He is very manipulative, very charismatic, He absolutely has Aubrey wrapped around his little finger. Aubrey is completely aware of the sort of person he is. She knows she's not safe with him, but somehow she is pulled under his spell, falls in love with him, and she knows that it's not healthy. It's a very, very toxic relationship, but she cannot help herself and she needs to be with Dare. Now, it's all very difficult because Dare still has his girlfriend publicly. He's absolutely messing with Aubrey behind, you know, her back. Dare has absolutely got his own agenda, and things very much come to a head in this one where we are not sure, and neither is Aubrey, just which side Dare is on. But of course Dare is on his own side, and he'll stop at nothing until he gets Aubrey absolutely to himself, doing exactly what he wants, because he becomes obsessed with her, obsessed with owning her and controlling her every move. So I have to say that I did not like Dare and still do not like Dare, but I thought this book is a masterpiece. It's so well written. It's very, very sinister. And although I like dark romances and you know, hope to have a HEA, I never really felt that Aubrey and Dare had got their HEA. I mean, it ends on a happy for now. Aubrey does seem very happy with Dare, but we also absolutely know that Aubrey has absolutely no choice but to be with him, and the moment that she decides that she doesn't want to be with him, she is not going to get an opportunity to escape. So while Aubrey is, you know, complicit, she's going along with Dare, she's saying she wants to be with him, ultimately if she ever changes her mind, he is not going to let her go regardless. So yeah, like I say, brilliantly written, very, very sinister, and more to come from Dare, because we see him cropping up in the other books. He's not done yet, and he is still very much preying on all the other characters in this series, so it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Then I've got 3 mafia romances that I want to talk about. So these are my 3 favourite mafia romances from Q1. The first one is The Tallest Tower by Emilia Finn, and this is book 1 in the Underbelly Enchanted series. And in this one we are following Felix and Christabel. Now this is sort of a spin-off or set in the same world as her May at Justice series, and Felix is kind of head of this sort of mafia family. He is very cold, very ruthless, standard sort of mafia hero. Now Christabel, who is our heroine in this one, she's a journalist. She is working on a story to kind of figure out what is going on, how bad this Felix's sort of mafia family is, and starts to write some interesting stories about him and his family. And he's not too happy about the fact that she keeps, you know, writing these sort of feature pieces on him, and he decides he needs to take matters into his own hands and stop her from writing any more stories. So of course, what does he do? He basically kidnaps her and takes her hostage, and keeps him trapped in her in his sort of house, basically. Now he does this like spur of the minute on an impulse thing, and we started to figure out pretty quickly that it's probably not that clever of him to have like taken a journalist hostage, because he's now only got a couple of choices. One, he's going to let her go and she's going to write more stories about him, and in fact now she's got even more evidence and ammunition against him, or he's going to have to sort of dispose of her to keep her quiet. Of course there is a third option here, and that is that he could get her to fall in love with him, and then she won't want to share any more stories about him. Unfortunately for Felix though, Christabel is quite severely diabetic. Christabel does not tell him that she's diabetic, and so it's not very long before she starts to get very, very sick, because she doesn't have her insulin with her and she can't take her insulin. Now she should really have said something to him, but she didn't want to kind of reveal this weakness as she perceives it to him, so that he can use it against her, and she was very much hoping that she would escape before she got herself into too much trouble. But unfortunately that's not how it plays out. She gets very, very sick indeed. Now Felix knows that he can't ring the take her to the hospital or ring the ambulance like normal, so he calls on his sister-in-law from the May at Justice series, who comes to help, because she's not strictly a doctor, but she is like a coroner, and knows some medical stuff. So she comes over with all her equipment and helps him nurse Christabel back to health. She's obviously not pleased with Felix. She's like, what the hell are you doing? You need to release this woman. I can't believe it, but still does help him. And then Felix, you know, actually feels a great amount of guilt, shame and remorse for putting Christabel in such jeopardy with her health, and very much takes care of her. So there's a great caretaking element to this story as well. Of course, there's loads and loads of plot and backstory in this one. We're going to get more in the next couple of books in this series, so I'm really looking forward to that. And the only warning that I will give is that the first chapter in particular is very shocking. There's some content in there that I was like quite shocked to see, not because it hasn't, something similar hasn't happened in other mafia books I've read, but definitely not in the first chapter. So it's a very, very gripping, very kind of like shocking first chapter that really hooks you into this book, and then kind of like propels the story forward. So really enjoyed how this one was written and would highly recommend. Then the next one is Wshe and Revels by Gabrielle Sands, and this one is book 1 in the Fallen series. I only just recently read this one and really enjoyed it, gave it 4.5 stars, and this one is sort of an Italian mafia romance. It's also a hidden identity, kind of a workplace romance and an age gap as well. In this one we're following Damiano and Valentina. Now Valentina is a mafia princess from New York. She was forced into an arranged marriage with one of her father's capos. He is a very cruel, sadistic person, and he gets off on torturing people. And once they were married, he then forces Valentina to help torture his victims as well. And so she is extremely, you know, traumatized by this whole situation. Is desperate to sort of escape, but is not brave enough, strong enough to, you know, do that for herself, until her husband brings home a young innocent girl and expects Valentina to torture her. Of course, Valentina has had enough. Enough is enough. She is not prepared to do this, and so she decides that she's going to help rescue the girl and escape while at the same time, and that is exactly what happens. Both Valentina and this girl manage to escape. They get on the next available flight, which takes them to sort of Spain, and then Valentina ends up making her way to Ibiza, and that is where the majority of this book is set. Now when she gets to Ibiza, her bag is stolen, so she loses quite a lot of the money that she was able to take with her, and so now she is in a bit of dire straits because she's got no real place to live, no job and no cash, and obviously constantly looking over her shoulder, waiting for when her family are going to turn up to punish her, take her home, because she's not even sure what's happened to her husband. However, she meets these couple of girls that basically suggest that she gets a job in a nightclub, and it should be fairly easy to do that without any kind of paperwork, because loads and loads of, you know, tourists come and work there for the holidays. And she makes her way to a club that is owned by Damiano and pretty much begs him for work. Now he's not too convinced that somebody who looks like her would do a very good job, and he thinks she's just some rich girl playing around, but she really begs him, and he agrees to give her a week's trial, and he basically makes her be the cleaner for this club, and forces her to do some very horrible tasks, because he's really hoping that it will put her off and she'll admit that she doesn't really need the job and she'll go on her way. But Valentina obviously is desperate for the job, so puts everything into it and works really hard for the rest of the week. And Damiano is pleasantly surprised by how meticulous she is, how hardworking she is, and begrudgingly gives her a full-time job at the end of that week, despite the fact that she doesn't have her proper paperwork. So we just figure out that obviously that something's going down. She hasn't completely told him the truth about herself, but Damien is very intrigued by her, very attracted to her, and therefore is being a little bit more lenient than maybe he would otherwise be. Of course, Valentina thinks that Damiano is just a club owner in Ibiza. What she doesn't know is, what we come to know is that Damiano is actually part of the mafia. He's a capo who runs the island of Ibiza basically, but he's also the heir apparent because his father was head of the mafia, but his uncle overthrew his father, and as such he's sort of been banished to Ibiza so that he doesn't cause his uncle any problems. But really Damiano is obviously plotting and planning to overthrow his uncle to take back what was rightfully his, and become the head of the mafia again. So of course Valentino's a bit of a fly in the ointment because it's a distraction Damiano doesn't need, but then when he finally figures out the truth of who she actually is and where she's actually from, he can actually maybe use that to his advantage. And so that's where the story really starts to pick up, and really enjoyed it and looking forward to reading the others in that series. The next and final mafia romance that I want to talk about today is Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark, and this is book 1 in the Brutal Birthright series. This is another mafia romance, and this time it's an arranged marriage between the Italian and Irish mafias. Now, essentially what happens in this one is that Gallows and the Griffins are rival families in Chicago. They tend to stay out of each other's way though, and they've got kind of other families that are more, you know, more of a concern, shall we say, than each other. However, the heroine in this one, Ada, convinces her brothers to gatecrash a party at Callum's house, and Callum is part of the opposing rival family. And while there, she accidentally sets fire to the library. Callum sees her, then goes after her, and then he ends up beating up her brother, who then becomes seriously injured. And then Ada is very, very unhappy about this and throws his grandfather's watch into the sea, and so starts this very antagonistic relationship between them, where they're trying to one-up each other and really kind of like take revenge for what the other person has done. Now, so this doesn't keep escalating. The fathers get together and decide that Callum needs to marry Ada in an arranged marriage to bring this family together. And of course, Callum and Ada are not too happy about this arrangement, but have to go through with it. And as a final act of defiance, Ada eats strawberries before their wedding when she finds out that Callum is allergic to strawberries, so that when he kisses the bride, he goes into anaphylactic shock and has to spend his wedding night in the hospital. And then basically it's a series of, you know, tit for tat basically between them as their marriage progresses. Of course, at first they have lots of hate sex, but very soon they start to realise they actually have feelings for each other, and they realise that they are more powerful if they work together as a partnership, rather than trying to compete against each other. And I really, really liked the relationship between these two. I thought it was really great fun to read and would highly recommend. And then the last one that I want to recommend that I read from Q1 was Rules of Engagement by J.T. Geissinger. This is another sports romance. I rated this one 4.5 stars, and we're following Maddie and Mason. Now essentially Mason is in a football team. He has got a really bad reputation though, because he is really, really, really grumpy and he doesn't treat women very well. And in order to you know, repair his reputation, make sure that he can get sponsorships and that he doesn't lose his place on the team, he really needs to repair his reputation. And if he settles down with a wholesome woman, then you know, they think this is the key. Meanwhile, Maddie, our heroine in this one, owns her own sort of dating agency. She specialises in matching up individuals and pairing them up so that they become couples. And so Mason's agent goes to Maddie and says, can you help find Mason a wife? Because he really needs that. And so she sets about trying to find him a wife. Of course, every kind of date that he goes on, he's completely obnoxious. He puts the women off. He's not a good date at all. And so Maddie then has to start training him, and you know, starts to spend a bit more time with him, getting to know him, to try and figure out how she's going to make this guy dateable, try and teach him etiquette, how he should treat women, that sort of thing. And Mason is the grumpiest person you have ever met in your life. He is so super grumpy, but we learn quite a lot about him, his backstory, what made him like that. And Maddie is such a fantastic character, where she really kind of like, you know, gets under his skin, figures out who he is, and then starts to really, really care about him. And there's a really, really good scene where someone accuses Mason of something and she really stands up for him and takes his side, and he's completely taken aback that anyone would believe what he had to say, and also defend him. And so I really, really like this one. I love the relationship between them, how they were together so much through this book. Their interactions were absolutely great. like I say, Mason was the grumpiest character I think I've ever read, but so lovable, and I'm so glad that Maddie was able to, you know, like I say, get under his skin, figure out who he was, and then figure out that instead of trying to find someone for him to date, that she was the perfect candidate herself. So there we go, that's my Q1 wrap up. So that is all of the stats that I had for the first 3 months of the year, plus my top 8 reads of the first quarter. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and I want to say thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. And as a final act of defiance, and in the first quarter I also went on to by Sam Mariano, and I also did a video. Now this is book 1 in the Fated. Did that brought up in suspense. So